Good morning, educators. The correct answer is good morning, Kenyon. Good morning, educators. That's also how I open every class I teach, even when it annoys the students excessively about mid-semester and all going, yeah. No. It's to remind everybody we're here to talk. We're here to, all of us, communicate. So I'm just going to kind of confess something. I suspect everyone in this room knows more about education theory than I do. I guarantee it. I'm a basic scientist. I'm a biochemist. That's what I do. I do basic research. I've sort of stumbled into, as some might say, a sort of a zany, crazy attitude because I discovered very early on when I started teaching EOSF in 2008. I loved working with students. It didn't matter if they were undergraduates or graduates. It just didn't matter. I enjoyed working with them because I found the topics so fascinating to me that I just wanted to see them get it. I wanted to see their eyes kind of open up, and you can see this. And so I'm going to walk you through a practical example of what I learned. And this is going to be a collaborative talk, so don't think you're getting off easy. But I also brought something very, very, very important. What is this? This is a box. Where are we relative to the box? We are outside of the box. There's cat hair in the box. Do not go inside the box. I took this from my cat, and she's very, very unhappy, but we got her another box. My cat thinks inside the box. We won't. And so it's sort of a shortened title, but the idea is necessity is the mother of invention. Okay, it's when you are faced with an impossible task that you are going to have to do something about it. And that's exactly what happened to me. Remember, just humble biochemist. I work in labs, I work with students, I work with cells and things. And so I'm going to hopefully walk us all through a practical example of making flipped classes work. And when I mean flipped class, I'm not talking about 30, 40 students. I'm talking 200. My biochemistry lectures are 200 to 250. My cell metabolism lectures are 200 to 250. And when I first kind of stumbled into educational theory, I said, oh, this is, I was very much the skeptic. This is fine if I have 30 students. That's great. I can do all kinds of wonderful, lovely things. It would never work for 250. I was completely wrong. But it does require to kind of throw away some of the rules that we may have built up over time. Not rules, not like policies or laws, more like memes, things we believe. Now, I suspect the level of that belief in this room is somewhat lower than it was for me. Okay, so first thing, I always open classes with a quote. So here, this is one I stole from Goodreads. Know the rules well so you can break them effectively. So what I'm going to do is put a challenge to the room. It is literally the same challenge that faced me in fall of 2015 when I started teaching biochemistry in the chemistry department at USF. You're going to get the same challenge. And together, we're going to go through a series of steps to hopefully identify the potential problems, the challenges themselves, come up with solutions, and all throughout the way, I'm also going to show you what I thought of. Now, what I thought of, I guarantee you, is far from perfect, but it was what I had. So remember, box, we're not inside of it. So we've all been here, we've all had this problem. The challenge, your schedule, you discover about 2 weeks before classes start, is you will have 2 courses at the same time, at the same day, in different buildings. You are, in fact, double booked. One of your courses, for me it was biochemistry, 200 students, juniors, and 1 TA who has no idea what's about to hit them. Your other class is 40 students, seniors, and no TA. Both are about, an hour 15 twice a week. Pretty standard stuff. So what do you do? Now, step 1, and we're going to start working on this right now, identify the problems. I want you to talk to your colleagues. I'm going to walk around and talk to you as well. And we're going to take a few minutes to work on this. What are the problems with this. And there's a lot of them. Please go ahead. This isn't passive. That's good. Excellent. We're going to get to solutions in a moment. So obviously problems. No, that's good. That's good. Okay, so we've had a couple of minutes to think about this. What are the problems? There's more than one. There's quite a few. What are the problems facing us right now?
Administration problems, you have double booking.
Well, yeah, first of all, there's administration problem. Double booking. That's no fun for anyone, especially the students. What else?
You can't have the same person to be in two different places at the same time.
Right. That's the main problem. Two places at once. Unless you have what was it, cloning? We were talking about cloning over there. Okay, what else? The classes are different, so we can't readily combine them. In fact, the classes are incredibly different. I didn't mention it, but one was biochemistry, and the other is clinical chemistry, which is a clinical type of course. So they're very different from each other. What else? Not enough help. Nope. And that TA does no idea what's about to happen. Not enough help. Anything else? Yeah.
We're expecting class time to be based on what the instructor is doing.
Yep.
Right. Teacher-centered.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. That's actually a really good point. So that's almost a rule, isn't it? We're expecting this, that this is going to be instructor-centered. That's pretty good. Any others? Anything else? Because that's a pretty good list, actually. All right. Being the naive person that I was, I clearly identified could not be in two places at once because I am not a photon. That's a nerd joke. I do these just for me. One, I was very concerned with the TA trying to lecture. Okay, so I wasn't comfortable with the idea of it's sort of the same thing, not enough support, not enough help. The TA does not necessarily know the subjects the way I know them or want them presented. So TA can assist with question and answer. So I was like, okay, so I can't somehow lecture in both classes, and I have to teach to both groups of students. Again, I was thinking instructor-centric. So my next thought was, well, how do I make this work? I can't ask for a change in the teaching assignment. It is what it is. So what can you do? What tools are available? So this is where I start thinking, what are my tools? What do I have? Again, outside of this box. So now we're going to open up the floor for you all to discuss for a couple of minutes. What tools do we have? We have the obvious, the TA. But are there other things that we have? Go ahead. So I'm hearing some good ideas. Let's hear your tools. Now we've identified problems. Now we're going to figure out what tools we have available, and then we're going to start talking about solutions. So get ready for solutions next, which I'm already hearing some, which are really good. So tools, what do we have? What do we have at our disposal?
You mentioned already that the online tools.
Yeah, we have online tools. Online. What else? Students themselves. Because we don't want to, how to put this, the students may be more capable than I was initially thinking, especially in the senior class. What else? I thought I heard. The TA. And the TA is an interesting one. The TA has no idea what's about to happen. Anything else?
You mentioned your guest speakers that you can have.
You could get some, perhaps guest speakers. That's a good one. I've used those. In the clinical course, I actually had the chief medical examiner of Hillsborough County come in to discuss toxicology. Other ideas? Okay. So I'm going to get to those in a moment with the tools I came up with. But I've also been hearing the rules questions. What are the rules? And what are the rules we're going to be breaking? Do all students have to meet both days? This was just it's sort of taken. Yes, they're going to meet both days. If you have a recitation section, they should probably be meeting then as well. I'm not a person for attendance because I figure my students are adults. They can choose to come or not. It's their business. I would prefer they be there because they're students. That's part of the thing. Does material have to be sacrificed? So I was also hearing, well, if you do anything strange, you may not be able to cover the same amount of material. Is that true? Maybe I could cover the same or more if I did it slightly differently. Can seniors perform investigative research? So could I task the seniors something beyond just lecture, something else, projects, perhaps? Do lectures have to be during course time? This is the online tool. And I was thinking, no, they probably don't. In fact, if they're not, maybe my lectures can be longer. The students could review any part of the lecture without having to write down notes as frenetically as possible. They could review what they needed to know, whereas if I'm lecturing, even if I poll the class, students who are ahead might get held back, students that are in behind, we're waiting for. Whereas if they're doing this on their time, they proceed through the lectures at their own pace. So this was a big one for me. Can the TA evaluate student activity? I was thinking, with proper guidance, if I gave them proper rubrics and actually educated the TA in my understanding of certain topics, then with the rubric and some guidance, the TA could probably do some evaluation effectively, certainly at least as well as I could, in the clinical course. Can the students work instead of sitting? This was the key to me. Why bother with lecture? I can put that online. So if I have students working, a TA can guide working. A TA can answer questions. A TA can do that. And then I could help with the clinical course and get them started on projects. And then someone else mentioned this side, and the TA and I could swap from time to time. So some days I'd be in biochem, and some days they'd be in clin chem, and back and forth. This is where I was heading. So this became the rule that we now know, and I think we've already started talking about this. I don't know that we need to continue here, but I'm welcome to do so. Just take it from the floor. How do we break all of them? These are what I consider memes, right? Especially in sciences, and I'm glad to be part of the group that's changing this, is you lecture, students receive, students answer questions on exam, everybody goes home, ta-da. Education has happened, except no, it really hasn't. Information transfer has happened, but education has not necessarily happened. So I wanted to break all of these. I did not want to sacrifice any material, but here was the big one. Do students have to meet both days? Because let's face it, if you're trying to deal with 250 students or 200 students all at once, I don't know about you guys, but I find 30 at office hours to be tough. This was the biggest sort of, there were two really big things I ended up, this was the biggest. For me, the answer was split the class. They are not going to come both days. They will come one day each. So I'm going to split the class right down the middle, 125, 125. Then now, if I'm there for some of the time, we've automatically quartered the student to instructor load. So if both the TA and I are there. With the other class, they will get instruction on a project one day, and we're going to go into that a little bit more, what they do on the other day. But the idea was to really stagger how the classes were going to function. Okay. So this would require, everyone in this room can probably see this coming, active learning. They're not going to hear lectures during class period. Those are going to be online, which we've already discussed. They're going to be doing challenges, and I'm going to show you a couple of things here about that. So here are the tools I came up with. Classrooms, the classroom itself. They're horrible, but they're still a tool. Mostly lecture halls are just these gigantic theater-like things that are not really useful for much of anything. But you have it. So this was my thought. Okay, the classroom isn't a constraint. I'm not bound to it. It's a tool. I have this room for this period of time, this many days a week, to use as I see fit, under the rules of academic freedom. Lecturing. You don't have to lecture live. That's the obvious one. Record all lectures in 2 weeks and put them online. That, of course, never happened. I was recording as we were going through the semester. This was the other one, the TA. I decided at some point the TA did not belong to biochem. The TA was my TA and would work both classes, on and off. Students. Now, this is where it all can fall apart. I believe, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well, the more difficult the task you give the student, the more willing they are to rise to the challenge. With a caveat. Students want to work. They want to show off. They want to prove themselves. But if the stakes are too high, they can get discouraged. So this became the idea. How do I create weekly assignments and projects where, by and large, the stakes are low? So they can make errors. They're encouraged to make mistakes. They're encouraged to have problems that the TA and I can help. But then you hold them accountable, this was my thought, for a series of exams. Now, those are real. And I tell the students, those are real. But everything else is not an assessment. It is a way to practice over and over and over. So the whole thing was, for me, get out of the way. Let the students work. So meet both days? I like to say no. Logistics was the problem. I already covered this. Okay, this opened everything up. Changes the class, breaks all the other rules. Students must get the same lecture online. No materials lost, and I could add more. More material could be covered if I wanted to. Students now had to be held responsible for that lecture, so they were given an assignment online to be completed after the lecture was listened to or watched or whatever, and brought to the class to be graded. Okay. They all work. Now, what is work? This I'm going to open up to all of you. What can students be doing? Remember, you've got 2 weeks to solve this problem. So big, huge demonstrations may not be feasible. So let's take a couple minutes now and talk about what the students can do in both classes during class time. And remember, TA instructor is, you have to arrange that so that it makes sense for what the student is doing. Okay? I'll turn it over to you. I'm hearing a lot of good talk at each table, but what are you all saying? What are you all thinking? Let's hear from each other. What do we got? What are students doing during this period?
They work on a project.
Projects, absolutely.
Semester-long project we built up on.
Okay, so we're going to talk about maybe a semester-long project. Whoops. Project. Okay, yeah.
There would be one kind of project, but as opposed to semester long, maybe shorter term. So if we want to change the groups and then get them out of the comfort zone, we can do that.
Okay, so perhaps shorter projects. And by the way, there's no reason you can't really do both of these. Okay. Shorter projects, maybe mix up groups. My handwriting is absolutely vile. That's fine. What else? Yeah.
We talked about structured problem solving or case studies or different group activities.
Oh, case studies, yes. Structured and case studies, yes. In clinical chemistry, that's exactly what I do. Because we can have diagnoses. It's all about diagnosing individuals with various lab results. So in many ways, what this kind of opens up, there isn't necessarily a single right answer in medicine. This is why they always say get a second opinion or a third opinion. So it becomes, not is it right or wrong, how well defended is the statement. And that's something a TA can evaluate and I can evaluate. And the students know. I'm going to need all kinds of resources and citations and all of this and that and the other. So you leave it open on a case study like that to where there can be multiple answers provided the students are capable of defending those answers. Very good for senior level students, I find. What else we got?
Our table mentioned having the group divide the lecture video, and then when they come together, then they have to teach each other what they...
Okay, so divide video. and peer teaching. Love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Peer assessment. Still working on mastering peer assessment myself to get them to actually be honest. Anything else? Okay. Pretty much, yeah. This is what it becomes. So, as I already kind of explained, now this is more for the clinical chemistry course. I went to the department because I knew this was a rule I was breaking. I said, look, you guys did this to me, so here's what I'm doing in return. I need the TA to be able to work on both classes, not to exceed the actual TA hours per week load, because that's a legal statute. That has to be. So long, I would govern that. The senior course was going to become research and presentation oriented. Thursday, they get a case study, series of case study problems, broken up in groups. Each group gets a different case study, all related to roughly the same organ and or organ system. Tuesday, they're going to, half the teams will orally present to the class what they came up with. The other half will write a paper or something along those lines. Next week, we swap. So throughout the entire semester, they're getting practice writing and defending, speaking and defending, all throughout the semester. I encourage the teams to work together, and so that while every team, presenters all had their own set of case studies and writers all had their own set of case studies, sometimes there was overlap, and so they could talk to each other. I encouraged all of that, and the TA could assist on the research day, and I could be there for the presentation day. And I, by the way, invited other grad students to come to these presentation days to be additional eyes on the presentations. So it wasn't just me. Okay, so we alternated that. Now the senior class is problem-solving based, online lectures presenting results. The junior class, work on work days. This is how I did it. I gave them timed challenges. So I had two methods of doing this. Just showing them on the screen, you have 10 minutes to write all the steps of glycolysis, every enzyme, substrate, and every structure, something like that. Or solve this dilution problem in 5 minutes. That's one way. Other times, I literally taped the challenges around the room. So they would have to get up out of their seats, go look at them, and start working on them. And I would see clusters of students working on a single challenge. And then they'd start talking to each other and start milling about the room. I, for 125 students, would walk around. But immediately when you have now everybody's at a different station, the number is dropping. Getting that number down is the key. So I know what the challenges are. I know how to solve them. I mingle, offer advice, but I don't answer any straight-up answer, no answer. Instead, I have them explain to me, or if another student has gotten the right answer, I have that student go to them. So I can start directing, oh, you guys need to talk to them about that pH question, because they've got it. If I see a common error propagating, halt the class, go up to the front, correct the error. And it's easy to spot that, by the way. Okay. Also, the room is optional. When I started doing challenge-based work, we had a beautiful, just gorgeous spring day. I said, why are we here? And everyone's like, well, where are the challenges? I said, they're outside. They said, all the students were really, I said, go outside. And so they did. Here's a group of them clustered around one of the challenges. Here's another group that, one of the challenges was here. Here's the other group. I had a few more pictures, but they didn't come out. Walking around, first of all, finding them. Not that they were hard to find, but they had to locate them. Then they started working on them outdoors. I didn't need a theater. I needed an open area. And eventually they all congregated on this patio. It was funny. We had about 125 students on this patio, and the department chairs coming out going, what have you done? I said, basically made myself an annoyance to everyone on the patio, but beyond that, they're working. And that was ultimately my solution for that class. Through all this, I'm showing you how to break all these rules. One, students don't have to meet every day. That's something we perceive. But meeting time is what? It's time getting information. Time online, that's meeting time. Time in the classroom, that's meeting time. Office hours, that's meeting time. Just make sure I have as much available time as possible. Yes?
You know, I know this was a challenge, but in terms of logistics, since the class was not registered as a hybrid or, you know, mixed mode class, did you run into any UCF problem, like, you know, if they're not showing up on a certain day and something happens to them and the class was not registered?
To be perfectly honest, I'm totally naive of USF's regulations about that. However, before I did it, I did go to my chair and to the undergraduate director, and I said, look, this is what I need to do in order to make this work. So I didn't get any pushback, short of, oh, good luck, which was kind of the attitude, which is fine. You know, oh, you're going to try this. Great. But I just decided to do it. And if things go wrong, I am responsible, full stop, because I made these choices. I pretty much demanded the TA be allowed to assist with more than one course given the situation I was in. They were amenable to that during that time. Don't lecture during class, except to correct. You know, if there's an error that is propagated, correct that. Do not sacrifice material. You can enhance it. You can extend it. You can add more if you really want to. And this was something I started to notice, because I've been doing it this way many times now. Students tended to breeze through certain challenges, but then go over and just really work on the things they were specifically having trouble with. And they would chase me down to go up to a whiteboard and really work it out and all this. And there was a lot of variation on where the students are stuck, which we all know. But I was saying in a traditional lecture, I had no way to make sure everybody got what they needed. Like I said, if some of the students were ahead, they were then waiting while I brought other students up. And the students I'm bringing up may still not quite get it. So this way, the students were focusing on their difficulties. That's what I found. And they work. They absolutely work. I do have one rule: no laptops, no phones. You come with your notes and your book. You can use your notes, your book, your colleagues, and the instructor. That is what you're permitted to use. And I also warn them, by the way, Google is very frequently wrong, so, you know, it's to your benefit. And I did this in basically both classes. So just as we saw, the answer was to flip both, work with the TA, expand the TA's role, structure the student course so that I'm not dealing with 250 students or 200 students at one time, and really break it down into groups. That's effectively what I do. Difficulties. It's not easy. This is our standard sort of, we're all familiar with this type of lecture hall. Pretty much useless for mingling. It's physically demanding, by the way. I run around. I'm moving in and out of these aisles and running up and down the short flights of stairs. I can't do big ones. So classrooms are not ideal. Tons of grading, because you give assignment after assignment after assignment, and it all has to be graded for accuracy. Now, not necessarily graded to be scored, but the students need to know what they're doing wrong. So I'll say, okay, this is participation credit only, but I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong. And so the students doing the in-class assignments are expected to bring literally a copying lab notebook. They write their answers, they tear out the copy, they give that to me. So they always have their work. So it's not in my hands, and they can't study it if I'm holding it. So now I have a copy. And you may have noticed you kind of have to have a pretty good personality if it can get very chaotic, which is fun. I like the chaos. But if you're kind of iffy on chaos, be careful, tread with caution. And as we were talking over here, you do have to make the lectures if you're going to do them online. And I've noticed a lot of my colleagues get daunted by this, but then I say to my colleagues, but you already lecture. You already do it. There is effectively no difference between saying what you're going to say in front of people and saying what you're going to say in front of your cat who's busy meowing and crudding up your audio. And then the students notice and they say things like, just pet the cat. It's like, I am petting the cat, that's why the cat is meowing. That really did, just pet the kitty. And no matter how you break it down, it's a ton of students. And that's why I encourage, I actually moved away from the timed things and I would post the challenges on the walls with expected time to completion. And I'd say to the student, you should be able to complete this in this amount of time. If you do not, you need to talk to me about where you're having difficulty. So now that you've seen what I've done, and we've talked about some other ideas, I want to hear from you. This is what I have. How do we make it better? What can I seek out? What can we come up with? I've developed this in semesters where I'm not double booked, so I just kept the process because it worked. But what else could we do? Let's just brainstorm for a few minutes, maybe hear out from the tables. How can we move this better? Yeah.
So I really love what you're doing with your class time, and I think you've refined that. What I would look at is what are you doing with your online time, and can you do more than just recorded lectures? Because students these days, they don't want to listen to a 1-hour lecture on a video.
Right.
So can you chop it up and do a
Yes.
series of shorter videos, have them go out and crowdsource and find resources to share back with the rest of the class, and kind of break it up and really take advantage of the affordances of the online portion too.
Exactly. Not for either of these, but another course I teach that is solely online. It's called Cell Biology. And I was working with the Atlee group at USF, and we did break them up, straight up, with table of contents. So students could go to the specific points in the video. I didn't know how to do that personally, so they showed me how to do that. I also link out to other videos on YouTube and things like that. One thing I failed to mention is, so students are doing work through the week. On Friday, they get an online quiz at exam level difficulty. I tell them, these are exam style questions. Now, they may not be exactly exam questions, but they're going to be in this style, and they're timed. So they get one more chance to see if they're still stuck. So I do some online quizzing and online videos, but you're right, we can expand the entire online component. Yeah, good. What else? Yeah?
I think since the face-to-face time is limited, to maximize what we get out of that time, it's good to get them to do something ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, in my classes, I get them to do a discussion posting before they come. So then that way, the discussion posting is structured in a way that there's some required reading that they are supposed to report about, some of the most important reading on that particular module topic. And then they're supposed to go online and find some opposing ideas,
Mm-hmm.
newer articles or new information about that, and then make their own conclusion. So before they come to the class, they actually have read the material to a degree, they have digested it, and they are more prepared for that limited time period that they're going to be with you or with the TA or somebody else.
That'd be really good in the, especially in the biochemistry course, because I like to focus on causes of disease at a molecular level. So to present, okay, here's this disorder. Based on what we know so far, what are your thoughts? Can you go find out some current literature on this?
We do the same thing in political science.
Yeah. Cool, very good. Yeah.
In courses that are taught across the country that have a fairly standardized content, certainly part of biochemistry would fall into that category.
Yep.
I was talking to a colleague of mine
Absolutely.
in biochemistry at FIU who flipped his classroom, and he said, I discovered there are a lot of, video series out there
Yes.
by extremely charismatic lecturers, that are, and he said, I considered using them, but I felt it would compromise me, as the instructor in the classroom, so I decided against it, and I was wondering what you thought about his reaction.
Okay. Gut reaction? Guy's wrong. It's not about me. It's about them. What is the absolute best way to get the information to them? Now, later I can crush them with an exam. That's about me. But if the student does well, that's due to the student. We show the way. So I disagree with that approach.
Well, he was thinking in particular of his role as the,
No.
as the instructor.
I personally disagree with that because my role as the instructor is to guide students to resources to help them and to maybe clarify sticky points, but really it's guide. So if this is just the best lecture I've ever seen on pH, go look at that. In fact, one of my TAs last year was just demonstrably better at one of the things in biochem than I was, just knew it. And I said, you know what, students, talk to this person before you talk to me, because this person right here knows it to a nuance that I just don't. And it happens. And there's a certain sense of humility knowing I don't know everything, and I'm not the best person to teach every single thing, so I want what's best for them. That's my gut reaction.
Thank you. I appreciate your view.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question. So before you had this double booking,
Yeah.
I assume you taught these classes, also before you did the flipping, did you teach these classes in the traditional way?
No. I had not taught either of these classes prior to that semester.
Because I wanted to see the perception of the student, how much better
The reviews I get are overwhelmingly positive. They love the challenge. The seniors especially, these are self-selected seniors. It's like 4,300. These people want to go to medical school. They want to do diagnosis. And I get over and over and over again, I'm glad this isn't just a lecture with exam. We're actually doing. And then one student who got into medical school reported back to me that this is how they train. So I was like, oh, that's serendipity. We'll take it. As far as biochem, I did teach cellular metabolism for many years, and they're related. They're very strongly related. And what I can tell you is I get better. I'm not a statistician, and I haven't done the research, and I'm not showing you any data. In my experience, after doing the experiment, the students, by and large, performed better at the mid-range. The top tier, they were fine. There's nothing I can do to stop them. The bottom tier, the very bottom, I have a very hard time doing anything with. There's just always some, and I reach out to them. But sort of in that mid-range, I saw an improvement in the mid-range. Say my averages were somewhere around 70 to 73, and suddenly became 75 to 78. That's just a subtle shift. So I know I need to keep working on things. But very importantly, when I would speak to these students outside of class, like in office hours, and say, here's a marker, there's a whiteboard, go do, they did. They did it. I had a student that was in cell biology and biochemistry who was having trouble, and I pulled him into my office and said, okay, explain to me this concept from both perspectives, biochemical and cellular. And he pulled it all together. It was incredible to see that. So I'm seeing more and more students really get excited about the work because they're impossible challenges. And by the way, the challenge difficulty is very high, but the stakes are very low. So if they blow it, that's okay. It doesn't crush their grade in any way. It gives me a chance to identify problems and fix them. But no, I had not taught either of these. So I can't give you that information. Okay. Well, that's about it for me. Just closing out with a quote from Neil Gaiman, some of you may have heard of as author. I hope in this year to come you make mistakes, because if you're making mistakes, then you are making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing your world. You're doing things you've never done before, and more importantly, you are doing something. Thank you very much.